Hello?
Yeah. Marta, I will be asking you first. She will soon start it, will be welcomed, and then I'll take over and make a little introduction, and then I'll ask you things, okay?
Okay.
Johanna.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Johanna Hans. I'm the desk officer for the European Dialogue of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom. And I'm also speaking on behalf of my dear colleague Antonia Esa-Ruperti, desk officer for Southeast and East Europe in our Berlin-Brandenburg office, when I welcome you all to tonight's talk on Backlash Against Women's Rights, the Istanbul Convention Under Threat. The topic of tonight's debate could actually not be more timely because since the outbreak of the coronavirus at the beginning of this year, violence against women and girls has intensified. And this is something that is not happening somewhere far away in some autocratic regime, but it's happening here in Europe and sometimes even next door. Unfortunately, in the past few weeks, women's rights had to suffer yet another severe setback, and that was in Poland, where the Constitutional Court ruled to tighten Poland's abortion laws, which are already among the strictest in Europe. And in the midst of all this, it was that the governments of Poland and Turkey have threatened to leave the so-called Istanbul Convention, a human rights treaty which aims at protecting, preventing, and persecuting gender-based violence. Also in other countries like Bulgaria, for example, the resistance against the Istanbul Convention and its ratification is increasing. We are therefore all the more grateful to have a lot of great women with us tonight from Poland, from Turkey, from Bulgaria, and from Germany, who will give an account of the women's rights situation in their respective countries and will discuss with us what a withdrawal and non-ratification of the Istanbul Convention would mean for women's rights in Europe and the rule of law in Europe. We are also very honored to have the journalist Birgit Firnich with us tonight, who will moderate tonight's discussion. Before I hand over to you, Ms. Firnich, we would like to premiere a short video that we have produced with our brilliant partners from across Europe to send a strong signal against violence against women and for female empowerment. And I hope it plays.
1 in 3 women around the world experiences sexual and physical violence in her lifetime, and these are only the official numbers. The full extent lies in the dark. Violence against women. A global pandemic. Violence against women. It has to stop. 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 Only then can women reach their full potential, so that they, too, can thrive to contribute in full to the societies they live in. We need women, in all spheres of life, as equals, because equal they are. They are strong, and they show it. Every single day. Women are standing up, fighting for our rights. Women are leading, guiding us through conflict and hardship, and women are taking responsibility, leading us to greater success. Stop the violence. Unleash this potential.
So, hello to all of you. My name is Birgit Firnich. I've worked in Africa and in Moscow as correspondent for German television for many, many years. And I'm very happy to welcome you all on the eve of this International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which will be tomorrow. It is one of the most widespread human rights violations, domestic violence against women. It knows no boundaries, and it is on the increase, especially now during the Corona lockdown. As people are confined now to stay at home, to their homes, reports of domestic violence have soared. As a journalist on our news desk, I have experienced that we have made several reports about this. Organizations around the world serving victims of abuse are reporting an increasing number of calls of women. And in this context, it is particularly disturbing that the several European states have recently taken steps to roll back rules designed to protect women, which we all are aware of. And as you've mentioned briefly, but I'll just put it sort of into more perspective, in May 2020, the Hungarian legislature refused to ratify the convention. In September 2020, a narrowly elected Polish government announced that is also considering withdrawing from the treaty. And in Turkey, the ruling Justice and Development Party has similarly threatened to leave the convention. Bulgaria's constitutional court held it unconstitutional in 2018, citing the treaty's definition of gender. So as these governments are mobilizing their support along nationalistic lines, perhaps to divert the attention also from broader socioeconomic crises and to take advantage of the fact that pandemic-related restrictions have made it more difficult to organize any opposition, it is increasingly interesting to see that there is protest in, say, Poland. How successful are these conservative ruling governments in discrediting the Istanbul Convention? That is what we want to look at today. And how is that affecting the role and the situation of women and weakening the position of LGBTI people in these countries? Therefore, I'm very, very happy to introduce my panel here, our panel tonight. On behalf of Friedrich-Naumann Foundation, Marta Lempart, who made a name for herself for getting small town women involved in the fight for women's rights and helped to build up a grassroots movement in Poland, right across Poland. We have reported about this on German TV. Barış Altintaş. She is an Istanbul-based journalist and has worked at various publications in Ankara and in Istanbul, covering politics, science, and women's rights. And from Bulgaria, we have Denica Ljubinova, human rights lawyer focusing on women and LGBT rights in Bulgaria, whom we'll be talking to in a minute. And there is also Nicole Bauer. She is a member of the German Bundestag and spokesperson for the women's policy for the FDP parliamentary group. Since Marta Lempart doesn't have that much time and has to leave at 18:30, I would like to ask a few questions and to begin with Marta. Marta, would you, but also, I would also like to encourage all of you, if you do have questions to each other, please butt in, please make me aware of that you would like to ask a question. Marta, to you. Why can you describe why is the Polish government so sternly opposed to the Istanbul Convention? Your Minister of Justice has announced that the government would formally begin the process of withdrawing from the treaty. What is the situation? How far is that gone? Who? Hello?
Okay, I have to unmute. I am so happy that you've said that it's Polish government doing this.
Yes.
Because I've already heard that Poland wants to do something that it's not true. Obviously, it's the Polish government that's breaking all the rules. It's not us, it's not Poland as a whole. So I pay a lot of attention to that, and I beg you to pay attention to that, you all, because it's in the words also, the struggle that is visible. So I guess I don't have much to say why religious fundamentalists think women should be objects and should have no rights, along with children and LGBT persons and anyone who's not a heterosexual white male, because I think there are much smarter people than me analyzing that, why fundamentalists hate people. I don't actually care why they attack me. I think what I want to say about the situation in Poland, and I think it's the most important part, that we're not talking about withdrawing the convention only. We're talking about the attempt that was made in 2017 to legalize, at least partially, domestic violence in Poland, to dismantle the system that we have. So with the Kremlin solutions, when the first act of domestic violence is not a domestic violence, it has to happen more than once. This is the law that is there actually in Russia. And with all the system that would become not obligatory for the police to react, for the social services to react, for example, to register acts of domestic violence. And this attempt to dismantle the system, it was actually a government project. It was government bill that was being prepared in 2017. It has a number. It was it was officially published as a government bill that was in the works of the government. And I guess the part of that what happened then, the stopping of this implementation of this bill that would legalize domestic violence, that would dismantle the system, was partially because of the protests, but it was partially because we were under the Istanbul Convention, and the government realized that to impose this legislation, to put these bills into action, they have to withdraw Poland from Istanbul Convention. So that's why we're looking at this. We're not protesting against the government dropping the Istanbul Convention. We are protesting against legalizing domestic violence, because dropping the convention is just a mean, and the aim is somewhere else. And we also use that as an example that any government that wants to drop any human rights convention does that because they want to implement laws that are contrary to these conventions. Our government wouldn't be doing that if they didn't stumble in 2018 on the issue of convention while trying to dismantle the system of support for domestic violence survivors and domestic violence victims. That's why it's happening. And we are the biggest, the most visible example of that, because this is actually the government bill that had to be stopped because the convention prevented our government from imposing these laws, from putting these laws on the table in the parliament. And I think this is the crucial thing to say on our part. And I guess that's why we succeeded in August, when they tried already, they declared that they want to start the withdrawal from the convention with the protest, because we are talking about dismantling the system. We are talking about legalizing domestic violence. We are talking about the aim that is getting women and children and persons who are survivors and victims of domestic violence of any state help. This is the aim, and we see that clearly, and this is what it's aiming at. And of course, this is a horrible situation, but yeah, we've been in this horrible situation, especially for the last 5 years. So we don't expect much anymore, and we're not surprised with anything anymore.
And in terms of the protests, how deeply rooted are they, would you say? And by taking it to the towns, the smaller towns, which is what I understand you've done, how much of sort of new forms of protests have you come up with, or how much has it been sort of uniting women, making them aware?
The protests that we have now are not only about abortion, are not only about women's rights. They are about all fields, the economy, the healthcare, the social security system, human rights, LGBT rights, anything you can imagine with a government that hates people. But certain things happen, and I can give you an example that on this wave of protests, because our organization basically became 4 times larger in 2 weeks. We provide help to 600 cities now, not 150, as we used to do that. And there are actually certain things happening about domestic violence in places that we would never dreamed of anything happening and anyone protesting. So in Podhale, this very, very traditional part of Poland, when they didn't implement the government laws on domestic violence, so they openly denied to implement convention on this local government's level, and they are proud of that. And there is actually a group of resistance now. There's a group of people opposing that. There's a group of people who demand the local authorities to at least implement what's implemented in the national laws. So this is a huge thing happening. Not the amount of people, because not everyone is protesting about domestic violence or even human rights, but the protest and resistance and issue of domestic violence, for example, appears in places that we would never ever imagine it to happen. And they go all the way, and they are very, very loud, and they have precise plans for action, and they fight their local governments. In spite of this national uprising against the government, the national government, there are actually people, local governments, who don't implement laws that protect domestic violence survivors. So I'm so happy to see that. It's on the wave of the national protests. We have new fields of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
great.
Basically, people are being drawn into politics that formerly were not involved. That's basically.
Yes. Yeah. I think 80, not 80, about 70% of people who organize protests now are people who do it, who haven't been doing this longer than a year.
Yeah. I mean, as a journalist, I experienced that in Russia, but now Belarus, it's a similar situation, different background, obviously. But Marta, you've also challenged the Catholics, and you've spoken out against those disgusting bishops, from what I read, as you call them. Are you not afraid to alienate some people, or can you just do it like that? I mean, I would always have thought Poland is a very religious Catholic country. How far does that contribute to polarizing Polish society, would you say?
Okay, I have one answer to the "Are you not afraid?" question, because I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid of violence. I'm afraid of gas on the streets. I'm afraid of people hitting young people with metal sticks, and then they turn out to be anti-terrorist brigades. So people trained to kill. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of someone being disappointed or surprised, or that I will have not enough calculation, the political calculation. I'm not afraid of that. And we don't say, come on, people, let's attack churches, let's go to the churches. We just said that it's disgusting what the bishops did about the abortion issue. That's disgusting what they said when they couldn't be happier with the ban on abortion that was announced by Mrs. Przyłębska, who pretends to be the head of the Constitutional Court. It's the people who did the rest. It's the people who revolted, and everybody says that there's 90% of Catholics in Poland. So these were Catholics actually protesting in the churches. We're not causing that. It's the bishops who do that with their arrogance, with what they say, with how they act, with how hateful they are. We just put the stream on and we facilitate it, but we don't cause it. We're not able to cause anything. We're just able to support people who express themselves now. And I think for many Catholics, it's the crucial point in time now, because they see that their church is not there anymore, and they are losing their ground because they see how hateful this institution and how corrupted it is. And they see that if they get help, it's help from us, basically. It's help from us, the ways of resistance, the ways to express, the ways to protest. They get it from us, not from anyone else. How to oppose when when you're angry, and how to oppose if you don't agree with something. This is the support they actually get from us.
Yeah. And so in other words, the protests are not divisive, you say. Quite the contrary, the protests are really taking in more and more people. And as I'm asking this, I would also like to tell people who are listening, apart from our panelists, to please, give us your questions. We will forward them to Marta and the other panelists. Yeah, sorry, Marta. So you're saying it's not divisive?
We had this, what we did right in the beginning, when these all postulates appeared, that all come up to this one postulate of the government stepping down, because that's what wypierdalać means. It means go away, put less nicely. I think we managed to convince people that they all have a voice. And what we managed to say, in spite of anyone saying that this is politically hard to gather all the voices, to give all the postulates because it's too many and it's too diverse and nobody will understand what the protest is all about. And our answer from the beginning was, we are the ones who were told to shut up. We were the ones who were told that their issues have to wait. We are the ones that were stripped of the voice. So now we won't tell the taxi drivers who are protesting with us that your problems in the pandemic with the taxi business are not important and shut up because we're fighting for something else now. Everyone is welcome to join. And I think that's how we kind of overcome the national division, because people are angry about many things. And they see that we might not agree with them as a movement, as a Polish women's strike, this movement that it's the help desk for the whole protest movement. But they see that we pay a lot of attention and we do all we can not to silence their voices and to give them the platform. That's why before the consultative council is similar as in Belarus. We have 14 teams working now. We presented the postulates and the solutions in 6 of the 14 fields today. And it's on education, it's on secular state, it's on women's rights, it's on climate, it's on workers' rights, labor rights, and I forgot what else. But it's the 6 fields. Oh, and on healthcare. And we're answering the question: what are we protesting about, and what can we do now about it? Not in some years. So the division is there still, and it's still polarizing, and especially the media try to polarize that. But people are with us. 70% of people in Poland support the protests. 1 in 3 young persons attended the protest at least once. So that if the cost is the thing that there are too many postulates and it's too much happening, I'm glad with that. We can handle this. And that's how we fight the division within the nation about certain issues, that everybody has a voice now.
Yeah, basically, I mean, it is still a phenomenon of our times that it seems women who are carrying the protest in several countries, that is, Belarus being one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel encouraged by them? I mean, obviously you are a great encouragement to them.
We learn a lot from them. For example, we took the idea of this regular protests, not to do protests every day, to protest every week on certain dates. We took the consultative council idea from them, because we're as Western as Eastern, and it's really stupid to pretend that we don't have this Eastern soul as we have with the Ukrainians and with the Belarusians and Russians. And so we use Telegram as the Russian opposition and Belarusian opposition does. And we take all we can from whatever it comes. Everything is useful if it makes people feel supported and feel that it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Marta, you're a very brave lady. You've been involved in the Star March in Warsaw with 100,000 demonstrators staged in 400 different places in Poland. You've become the face of that protest movement directed against the government. And how dangerous is that?
It's dangerous, but it's the cycle, I guess. So yeah, I'm especially attacked by the state media, and they are also trying to enter the office. So we have the security, and I'm staying in the office basically because this is the most secure place now. And I get a lot of death threats. But it usually happens. The state TV is especially a problem because it actually it has a huge, as you can imagine, it gets to a lot of people. And we have a precedence with Paweł Adamowicz, the mayor of Gdańsk, that was a subject of this kind of hate campaign by state TV, and he was eventually murdered by someone who was influenced by this hate campaign. And this is a similar situation, and I'm not the only person that this campaign is being led against. but I'm on the covers of all the government magazines basically now. It will loosen up at some point, I guess. But it's quite hard because they also attack my family and my friends, my former partners. They get all the information from the state documents, whatever they want. So nothing is secret anymore. I have no privacy anymore. But there are many people who are in a similar situation, maybe not with the TV, the public TV, but people who are being arrested and detained and taken off the streets, and their parents don't, because sometimes it's like 17-year-old people or 14 years old who are detained. And this is the real problem, that people are, the police violence that has never been on this level, and the police arrogance that breaks all the rules. Yesterday, the journalist was arrested. The journalist that made photos of in Maidan and in Donbass and in Tehran and in many other places and was never detained. She was never touched by any of the forces. Yesterday, she was arrested by the Polish police. Wow. Under some pretext. So we're talking this now. We're talking gas on the streets, and we're talking the brutality. Of course, I might sound like this person who's really surprised what police is capable of, because we didn't have that. The police more or less was this force, the state force, and it's not a state force anymore. It's a political force. And I guess it takes time getting used to that you have to, it's better to walk the other side of the street when you see a uniform. We didn't have that. I'm of this generation that was actually raised in these times when you didn't have to be scared of the police, and now it's coming back as it was in communist times. And yeah, that's one of the things that their government did, that we, after it all ends, we will be the country that has no respect to that, with people will have no respect to the state and will treat the state as an enemy, and the state is treating us as enemies. And that's what will happen as it was in communist times. The state was the enemy, and we have it again. That's a great loss, because we worked hard not to be, for that not to be like that.
Of course, so it's going back. I think that is the situation in other countries too. For instance, Turkey, Barış Altintaş. For you, it seems, and please, Marta, stay with us. It seems like your network for human rights defenders has written a letter to the United Nations, underlying the recent increase in attacks on LGBTI people in Turkey. Yeah. What is the situation like now? What was their response? And was there any response?
Well, first to start with, it was fascinating listening to Marta, because I think the situation is very similar in many respects, and that's very sad. And because speaking about the Istanbul, before coming to the general attacks on LGBT and women, when Marta said, this is not about pulling out of a convention. It's not about just a legal text or whatever. This is a very existential question for women and children, LGBTI individuals, everybody who's not basically men. And this is exactly how we feel about it, and how we came here, in this. So Turkey was one of the first signatories. It was one of the countries that signed on the first day when the convention opened, and opened for signatures, right? And then, and at the time they were a bit actually supportive of this, because a few years ago Turkey had been convicted by the European Court in a very huge landmark case, and which was the first time. Basically, the court found a state guilty of not fulfilling, positive obligations of the state in protecting women, right? This was what the Istanbul Convention says. But, and after about a year, they passed a law 6284 against, violence against women. But I really want to underline, like Marta said, this is not something really the government did. All the, women's groups, Women's Day worked so hard to get this law enacted. It was a result of a great deal of effort, a lot of fighting, getting this law out. So don't see this as Istanbul Convention was not something given to the women of this country, or, it was something that they actually fought for. And later on in the implementation, we saw the same thing. And like in Poland, the government always has this mentality that focuses on, on family, protection of family, and whatever that means. This family might come at a great cost for women, children. A woman might not be able to breathe in this family, but it's not important as long as that unit is protected. That's all that matters. So even after the convention and this law that was passed was basically going to be the implementation of the convention, so to speak. But basically the mentality of the government has been one that doesn't see women as people. So it's again, there's an anti-woman, anti-human group that has been very influential. And I think the LGBT part, I'll come to it later. I have I'm basically think that was actually inspired from the Polish government a little bit. I might be wrong, and there are Turkish people in the audience, people from Turkey, so I don't know if they will comment about this. But here's basically, I just want to say that the mentality is very similar. I want to say something about abortion. So in I think 2000, maybe 12 or 13, Erdogan, the president, made a remark likening abortion to one Uludere, where 34 people were killed by Turkish jets. These Kurdish civilians were killed, and nobody was actually really punished. And Erdogan said, "Oh, you say that is bad, but one abortion is like one Uludere, where 34 people were killed." And to this day, yes, on paper, abortion is legal, but we know that state hospitals don't do this, and doctors think it's illegal now, and you have to go to a private hospital, and state hospitals, oh, we can't do it unless it's something. So actually, in a de facto manner, this mentality is in place in many other aspects as well. And also when we were, with this, for example, with the implementation of this law, right? When women were seeking, and Turkey has a very high femicide rate. I think everybody has, but for this year, they had new statistics today from like the beginning of the January. I think it was 327 women killed, 24 of them just in the first 20 days of this month. So these restraining orders are very important. Actually, they can save lives, but in the case of Turkey, when you go to the police or a prosecutor seeking a restraining order, people actually have to take this booklets prepared by women's organizations to explain the law enforcement people that, oh, this is the law, you have to give it to me. So basically, Turkey never fulfilled its obligations from the Istanbul Convention, which basically says women are people. That's the idea, and they don't want to accept this. And this we've been seeing, especially since 2016, when a parliamentary commission investigated divorce in Turkey. And I don't know if there's an English translation. You should read this, because all of that hate for women is in this report. And how these mothers, taking custody of children, or men having to pay alimony, these are victimizing men. These are, attacks on our family, this and that. So this is the background, right? There's all this, anti-woman mentality, despite the signature. Also, remember this huge erosion of law starting. So again, when the AKP government signed this, Turkey wasn't in this situation. For now, as we speak, there are 86 journalists behind bars for, reporting the truth. Most of them Kurdish journalists. So, but all of these segments are under attack, and then basically the rule of law starts eroding. Now none of it is left, and so they have been, they've come to this. So this summer, what happened was, at some point after Turkey decided to open the Saint Sophia for Muslim worship, it was shortly after that, as far as I can remember. They said pro-government groups which have been talking about the convention, we should pull out. It's LGBT propaganda, it's losing family, it's attacking our family values. They said, and then Erdogan said, okay, we will discuss this. So this was in August, and we will talk about this. But this in Turkey, this happens all the time. And another big problem we have with women's organizations have been fighting it's a different topic, but it's very similar. So we have a law, the Criminal Code 103, which basically is about the abuse of children. And Turkey always wants to legitimize this. Sorry.
Yeah, but we have a question from an autonomous women's shelter here in Germany. They are asking exactly that. Article 3 of the Istanbul Convention states that the term women includes children, or rather girls, under the age of 18. How and to what extent is this taken into account in the respective countries? That is your country, Turkey, but I would also like to ask Denica Ljubinova, what is the situation there? Or who would like to answer this question? Are girls part of, are they seen as part of being in need of, being protected?
Yes, they are. But if this is this is true. The convention, the Article 3 define. No, sorry, I was confused about the question. I thought it was about the word. And
no. It's about children. Are they involved?
Oh.
Perhaps
about the usage. Okay.
Yeah, and Denica, what about you, Ljubinova? You have been involved in the protests which arose when, after the Constitutional Court in Bulgaria proclaimed that the Istanbul Convention was unconstitutional. How deeply rooted are the protests in Bulgaria? Now, you've heard a bit from Turkey, you've heard from Poland. How deeply rooted are the protests in Bulgaria? Because here in Germany, we don't hear that much about Bulgaria, I must admit.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just first give a little bit of introduction what we're facing in the last couple of years and what my colleagues from Turkey and Poland were saying, and I will definitely agree with this. We are witnessing governments standing against the human rights of their citizens. We are witnessing governments standing against women, against LGBTI people, against everybody who they don't consider to fulfill the requirements of a proper citizen. And this is what happened here in Bulgaria as well from 2016 until 2018, when we received the decision of the Constitutional Court. And the decision of the Constitutional Court stated that the Istanbul Convention is unconstitutional to the Bulgarian constitution. And I will say that this decision is irrational and destructive to human rights and to women's rights and to LGBTI rights in particular, in not only in Bulgaria but all over Europe. And how deeply rooted the protests are? Well, because there was no government decision on whether the Istanbul Convention can be ratified or no. The government didn't want to take the responsibility to ratify the convention. They just refused to tackle this problem and to go into this debate, and they gave the decision to the Constitutional Court, and they basically washed their hands with the Constitutional Court. So there were several protests, but the protests weren't that big because you already had a court decision, and not only a court decision, but a constitutional court decision, which was saying that the Istanbul Convention can no longer be ratified in Bulgaria.
And how much of an awareness is there? How aware are Bulgarian women that, because I mean, it's abstract even in Germany to some extent, Istanbul Convention is still something rather abstract. I'm sure Nicole Bauer will talk about it in a minute. How are, women in Bulgaria, how aware are they that that is going on?
Well, I'm not sure about this. I mean, these are social processes, and people's awareness, but definitely there is enough awareness within Bulgarian women that something like the Istanbul Convention existed for Bulgaria, and I'm using past tense deliberately, and they are aware that there was a specific rights and specific services that they were supposed to receive when the Istanbul Convention was to be ratified. But those rights and those services were taken away because the government didn't want to take the responsibility and it is very governmental question, because I believe, because I was part of the advisory group at the Ministry of Justice in 2016 until 2017 for the implementation of the Istanbul Convention within the Bulgarian legislation. And there, I would say there was the government wanted to ratify the convention. We were two groups of professionals, from like 40 to 60 professionals, working on the criminal legislation and on the legislation regarding social services. But somewhere in 2017, the human rights defenders, as I am, in this advisory group were just removed from the group, from the working group. We weren't notified, we weren't given any explanation, and this is when we understood something was cooking, like something wrong was going on.
So in other words, the government was serious about it because you were in that group, you know, very close to it. What brought about the change of mind? Do you know?
Well, I cannot be sure what changed the mind of the government. I guess it's the political conspect which is happening all over Europe, and the fundamentalists' agenda on undermining the rights of women and rights of LGBTI people all around, which is happening all around Europe. And I believe this is also what happened in Bulgaria in 2017, and which brought to the unconstitutional decision of the Constitutional Court.
Nicole Bauer, what about, Germany? Germany only ratified the Istanbul Convention in 2017. How much would you say has actually been implemented in Germany? How much of what is stipulated by the Istanbul Convention has actually been put into action in Germany? And how has that changed the situation of women in Germany? When you listen to what, these ladies have talked about, how different is our situation?
Yeah. Actually, it depends who you are asking. So if you ask the government in Germany, they would say a lot and everything is already done. But as an opposition, I would say there's a lot to do until now. There's still a lot of 15,000 places, for example, missing for women. They get a support in it. So there is a lot of things to do. And as an opposition, I would say it goes too slowly and it's not fast enough, because we have the pandemic, the corona, and we already know that all the numbers are increasing. And in this case, we have a lot of things to do. But still, there are a few things were already done. So we do have a system for help, support, and women shelters. We do have something like violence against women support hotline, reachable 365 per day, a day, and 24 hours, and in 17 languages. So there's still a lot of things. And in this case, we are already now knows that we are a role model for the EU. They want to expansion this in a in the next month. So already told us the European Gender Minister Conference for a few weeks ago. Though in this case, there's a lot of things too, but still we have, especially if we take a look at the women's shelters, where we have still not the capacities that we needed, and especially we don't have the financial situation there that we can build them. So in this case, but we do have a lot of things to do. A lot of things are already happened, but still it's an ongoing process, and in this we are until now.
And has the Istanbul, ratifying the Istanbul Convention actually created an awareness that violence against women is not a private matter, for instance? Has it changed the situation? I mean, is it that, or was it in any case an ongoing sort of evolution, development in German society, or is it the convention, itself?
I would say it's an ongoing process, but still now we know, and everybody knows, that violence against women is not a private matter. It's still important for the whole society, and whoever experience violence against women or in the private home, it's not alone, and he can come, and he should come and say something about it. So in this case, it's in Germany the same thing. It's important, don't be silent, and to make these unpleasant topics visible. So I think the mind is changing now, the awareness is raising, but still we do have some forces in our society, as a society, they don't want to have the Istanbul Convention implemented in the government and implemented in Germany. So, but I'm really, to be honest, I want to have the Istanbul Convention implemented in the German government and in the German society, because for a modern state like Germany, it is, and is to live equal rights and to live equality. We have to do this, and it's really it's necessary, and it's nothing to do it like luxuries, but it's a human right, and we talking about female rights. It's a human right, and it should be a pretty important task for Germany, but for the whole Europe and for all states. So in this case, I'm pretty want to say thank you to my colleagues from the other countries, because now I know a little bit more about the situation in Bulgaria or in Poland or in Turkey, but still we have to work together, because it's an important task, and we will make it. We can only take and find a solution together, I think.
Yeah, the question that comes to my mind is, what chances are there to establish a European movement in support of struggling women across Eastern Europe? Denisa, I think you've also talked about that. You as a lawyer have an understanding of how populist governments across Southeastern Europe have been using the notion of traditional family values to undermine women's rights. And actually, that is one question here from one of our listeners here, or viewers, I should say, who thinks that it is overlapping with the populist conservative backlash in Europe. What do you think about that? I mean, is that what is happening? And is there a chance of a European movement or European women, uniting against it? What would you say?
Is the question to me?
Yes.
For me? I would think it's about the backlash which we have now in Germany a little bit, which we recognize already in Europe, but we can do it only together. Only as an European Council we can do it. If this topic gets more important, and if all political guys and a lot of countries, they are modern, they don't want to have a backslash, they have to go forward and fight together against the forces which don't want to have the Istanbul Convention implemented. So it can only get the only solution is together, to go together and to fight together.
Yeah, and Denisa, the question to you as a lawyer, you have an understanding of those populist movement, and we also have somebody else writing to us that the situation in Croatia, for instance, is the same, similar situation as in Turkey or in Bulgaria. If you call the police, this lady is writing, they don't respond if they know the abuser. What would you say? Is there such a thing as like a backlash, something concerted in Eastern Europe, for instance?
Well, you can see it in a lot of governments all around Eastern and Central Europe even. It is going on, and it is, there are a lot of countries which are following this example, and Europe must act, and Europe must act now in order to stop this, because what we are facing is not only a backlash against women, it's not only a backlash against LGBTI rights, it's a backlash against human rights. And like, we have to, as human rights defenders, and our respective governments should know our history and how these small steps led to much bigger problems and to big problems in the history of the world history. And standing and just looking at what other governments are doing is not going to do us any good. And countries from Western Europe, and especially Germany, as with its strong position in forming the politics of Europe and informing the human rights steps in Europe, and not only in Europe, should take a very strong stand in defending LGBTI and women's rights in Europe.
Nicole Bauer, is Germany taking a strong stand, would you say? Is it in our focus, or is it all being drowned by Corona policies and lockdowns, part lockdowns, you call it?
I'm not pretty sure to date in this way. I'm not pretty sure if it's such important for us in Europe until now, especially because we have now a special position in the Europe Council, because we have we are the boss of it for only two months anymore. It isn't it more, but I think, yeah, it should be more important for Germany, because we have the same problem as already my previous colleagues told us. We have a special position, and if we want to use our position, then I guess we will come much more forward until thinking about it. So in this case, we can think a lot, and we can do it in 1-2 years, but then it's too late. We have to do it now. We have to do it in Germany. We have to go forward. We have to think about Corona numbers, not only in the hospital, but we have to do it like the statistic of the policy too. And then if we see it, and if we recognize the trend, then we have to act. And this action, I think it's necessary that Germany goes this way.
Mm-hmm. Marta, what would you hope for from, you're still in the call, I think, what would you hope for that, a country like Germany should be doing? And do you hope for like a sort of solidarity amongst women in Europe? Could that help your situation? Oh, I don't think Marta is here with anymore. Barish, what about you? What about your situation in Turkey? From what the people are writing to us, in some countries, like the lady here writing in from Croatia, she's also referring to Turkey. It seems that people are aware of each other in these countries. What would you wish, for women in other countries or official organizations, the EU, etc.? What would you hope for them to do?
I think, especially in the case of Turkey now at this point, it is very useful to call this out as frequently as they can, especially Germany or other European leaders, because 2 days ago, our president said, "Oh, we want to, our future is in the EU," and so they're closing up to the European Union again because there's the government apparently has huge financial problems. If anybody has been following Turkey, so earlier there was a lot of just vitriol, or the West, they're doing this, and now it's the opposite because everything is expandable. One day you can do this, the next day you can say that. So it's now a good time to put pressure on Turkey for Istanbul Convention and make this an issue, in addition to other issues like judicial independence and imprisoned journalists and other cases. So this is a very good time. I really agree with the asker's point, right? Deny, maybe not for projects, but deny some sort of financial, I'm not talking about sanctions, but in the case of Turkey, Europe is its biggest trade partner. So I think that is a very strong weapon to have. And other than that, I would have other recommendations to, in our own countries, we should be taking on some of the obligations of the state. Maybe, this is not our job, but, municipalities should open more women's shelters, counseling, to explain the law and just not give up, because they are definitely trying to create some polarization in the case of Istanbul Convention. Another question, another asker said, this the conservative backlash in Europe is, yes, they hope it to be a divisive issue. In the case of Turkey, we saw that most people aren't against the Istanbul Convention. It didn't work, it didn't divide, so they backed off for now. So we should always be on the alert and put pressure on Turkey, basically. And now is a good time.
And what about the resistance in your country during the lockdown period? It has been more difficult. I know that in Russia, there was a lot of really creative, resistance. What about in Turkey? What is happening?
So the right to demonstrate and has been basically non-existent since Gezi moments of 2013 in Turkey. But with the Istanbul Convention, there was huge reaction, and they started this. Some people were against this, but they used social media very actively, and they started an Instagram campaign, and there was a lot of resistance. Also, most importantly, the government's own, some pro-government women's organization, including one founded by Erdogan's daughter, said we can't do this. We can't pull out of the Istanbul Convention. So I think the government didn't expect that their own would be owning up the convention. So that was also very important. They weren't expecting that their own voter base would be supporting the Istanbul Convention. And I think a lot of it we owe to our own women's movement, including all segments. The conservatives are, of course, Turkey has a history of, good feminist movements, but everybody worked together in this regard. So, and they were very active on social media as well. And women still go out to the street despite, being gassed by the police, despite, of course, there were protests as well in Izmir, in Kadıköy. So in spite of, these restrictions, people still speak out. And like I said, Istanbul Convention is existential. And that's exactly how women see it here.
Mm-hmm. And did you find similarities, like in organizing the protests with regard to the countries that we've talked about here tonight, and also in the form of the backlash? Do you see that there are similarities with regard to Poland, with regard to Bulgaria? How do you see that?
I see, and you know, it really breaks my heart that we're actually speaking about the possibility of pulling out the convention. It is just, you know, so sad. And but yes, there's again, like Marta was saying, in Poland, you know, there are these crazy bishops, and in this country, there's this. These are extremists. You know, these are not normal people you would call conservative or whatever. These are just extremist people who have these horrible opinions, and they're wielding an unproportionally huge influence on the government and shaping policies. And of course, when yes, when women go, especially in some provinces, police brutality was enormous. And about pro-government press, which is all of our press now, basically. And, you know, how the things they write about the convention, just making out. So, but it also shows one thing. The reason why they're saying all about these convention, they're very irrelevant things, right? It's killing the family, it's LGBTI propaganda. There are a lot of things that are not necessarily, you know, related to the text of the convention, but it shows that there's a lot of fear on the part of these, I don't know, crazy fundamentalist people, that because they know that this system is changing, and that fear is good. And I think we can find a lot of strength in that, because it's going to happen to them, just as long as we stand our ground and understand that this is a fight for survival and for existence, not some international convention.
Yes, with regard to that, that's very interesting here. We have one lady here watching us. She's thanking us for the discussion, and she's asking, how can we better design our strategies to protect the Istanbul Convention and to you know, explain what it is all about. Who would like to answer? I mean, it's a difficult question, I would say, but Barish, how can we improve? How can we improve our strategies? What do you think?
Well, I see about the advocacy question is always actually the most difficult question. But here, and I think maybe Marta is a better person to answer this. But here I can say that the polls that, you know, they were doing in Turkey at the time, for one thing, showed that most people aren't against, you know, the convention. And here in Turkey specifically, we know that both the government supporters, like every segment of society, is very distressed about the high number of women murders. And this is very rare in Turkey, where everybody agrees on one thing. So I think this violence part could be used in advocacy. It almost never happens in other subject. And then the municipalities started, you know, using putting signs on the metro, informing people about what the Istanbul Convention is. So I think a lot of advocacy should continue as educating, informing, booklets, as long as you know, it sounds dull. I think it's very important that people, ordinary people, understand this and have this reach and emphasize these points, instead of trying to answer, oh no, it's not this and that. It's just like, this is what it is, and just educate.
Marta, you're still with us, I have been told. You've had a lot of experience with this social protest now, because it's it's a very virile situation in your country. What do you say? No, we can't hear Marta. Denica, what about you? Sort of as a final round, what would you say? What can we do to improve you know, the advocacy, to improve the protest or the support? What is your final say?
I will at the end say that we don't have the power to influence the international politics, but each one of us has a very powerful stand in our countries. And I believe each one of us, and also not only from the participants in this discussion, but from the viewers and from everybody who is active in their countries, they have the power to change the hearts and minds of people, the hearts and minds of politicians in their countries, and to shape these politics in these countries in order to serve the people in these respective countries.
Mm-hmm. Ladies, I want to thank you all for
Can I try? Sorry, because I had some problems also with the audio. The thing that comes to my mind is because it's always about the media that don't care, basically, and they are only catching if something is interesting and visual and so on. And that's the thing that I try to always recommend and fight for, which is very hard because we have our own fields and needs and so on. So the collective action that goes under the same name, under the same logo of the action. So the same visuals of all the countries. So it's not just a solidarity action because it's something bad is happening to those poor women in Poland or those poor women in Turkey. And we go outside the consulate to say that we don't agree to that, but that we do something in different countries on the same day under the same slogan, under the same call. That would be something that media couldn't ignore. They can ignore people protesting outside the consulates. They can ignore the international coverage about something happening in Poland or in Turkey, but they won't be able to ignore if it's a joint action in many European countries. That's what I would do. That's the thing that we should. But I know it always ends with the fight over the logo. So yeah, I guess we're not that screwed yet, so we can fight again about the logo still.
Yeah, I thank you very much. And indeed, I mean, coming from the media, obviously, I can assure you, yes, that is exactly what the media would not ignore. And obviously, they don't want to ignore that. And as we know from the little clip in the beginning, the full extent lies in the dark. I mean, that is what we all know. It has more than one meaning. Obviously, it applies to women and what they experience. But also to the effort that goes into it. I mean, from what I've learned from tonight, the campaigns bring together a broad coalition of actors. There are many different aspects to it. It seems like in Poland, but in other countries too, it has brought together people who formerly would not have been acting together. The Istanbul Convention focuses strongly on the prevention, prevention of violence against women. But I think what has become clear too is that we should focus not just as something that is just some kind of convention, but it's a pillar of European democracy. That, from me, I thank you all. Thank you all for being here tonight, and look after yourselves. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
And thank you, Friedrich-Naumann Foundation, for hosting this tonight, for hosting this very important discussion, as I find, and bringing together these different points of view and different angles of looking at the problem, which seems to be a problem across Europe. Thank you very much.